Empower Youth Week Masterclass. Be inspired, be connected, be transformed.
It's a beautiful day. We are in conversation around tips from a CEO with Buyani Zwane. I am a Chief Executive Officer, but I prefer to refer to this as cheerful engagement orchestration. And the perspectives I'm going to be sharing with you are related to how you get to be relevant in today's job market. And in that way, in this masterclass, it becomes critical to be able to paint the picture. What is the context we're operating within? It is important to be able to look into what is it that CEOs are grappling with, what's on the agenda on a daily basis. It is crucial to be able to think about how you can be a part of what the CEOs are dealing with. First and foremost, it is critical to be able to know that CEOs have to be meeting every challenge that is presented to them head on. And many a time, it's done through others. And as they do so, you need to be able to look into how you can be a contributor in that environment. Finally, it is critical to be able to think about, well, there are a whole lot of other people who are in the race to be able to be considered in the fulfillment of the mission, purpose, vision, and whatever it is that has been articulated as the objectives of the organization. It is interesting to be able to note that when 2019 was giving way to 2020, we were clear as to what were the things that we're going to need to be able to pay attention to. We were clear about the fact that we would need to be grappling with the Internet of Things, augmented reality, virtual reality. We knew robots were going to be the thing to be able to work with. Mining sector was already having conversation around drones. And 3D printing had become a key thing. The University of Pretoria got to be able to bring through to us examples of what 3D printing could do. We had a cochlear implant, and it flowed from that. We then began to have significant conversations around blockchain and cryptocurrency. Linked to that was the discussion around artificial intelligence. And guess what? What that began to be able to tell us was the necessity for us to be able to take charge of our lives. And Jim Rohn, a business philosopher that I've got great respect for, stated, if you don't design your own life plan, chances are you'll fall into someone else's plan. And guess what they have planned for you? Not much. So we started the year with very clear plans for ourselves. Each and every one of us had our New Year resolution, and most of the business world had been in conversation relating to the terminology of what is called the VUCA world. And this has been the story for well over 4 decades, and it was given prominence from about 2006. And as we related to that, March showed up. As March showed up, it changed everything. We began to see the impact of what would define our working environment, would define our interactions around the world, would define how we shop, would define how we entertain one another and how we relate in families. So what that then did was to shift where we were in a space of VUCA being about volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. It shifted that to a point where our context is one which became about volatility. It became about uncertainty that we began to experience. Then ambiguity came before complexity. And how could that have been the case? Well, it became the case because it required that we now engage more as leaders. And as CEOs, we began to have to understand that the script we had been working with wasn't going to be able to help us. What we needed to be able to do differently was to ensure that where there is volatility, with clarity of vision, where were we taking the organization? In fact, it called on us to question the vision we had in 2019 and the start of 2020, because right there and then, our story had to be rewritten. We then moved into a realization that with so much uncertainty, we needed to be able to prove thorough understanding of our work environment. How do we get to be able to understand our work environment when everything is mobile and is shifting? When everything is becoming all the more ambiguous? Well, we needed to take action. And as we took action, central to all that we were going to be able to do was to ensure that we get to be adaptive. We needed to be more agile in our approach to anything that we're doing, because the playbook we had been working with had been shifted. But what was also even more critical was to move with speed. It became necessary that we accelerate the way in which we introduce change and how we get others to be able to find themselves in that space of change. Where ambiguity had been the case, well, we needed to be able to take action, be agile, be accelerating. And then, where complexity was the issue, we needed to be a lot clearer. We could no longer have our statements being nebulous. We could no longer have statements that make sense to the boardroom, to the C-suite, to the exco, and not mean anything to the customer base. Because when somebody began to be able to introduce the terminology of essential versus non-essential, our world had to be in line with that. Stephen came through towards the end of last year and presented a very interesting matter. Stephen Gainmaster said, you've had VUCA for a long time. Maybe it's time for us to be able to think about it in a different format. And in a space where volatility had been the thing to be able to work with, we needed to be able to appreciate the brittle state of how things can be breakable. The systems we've been working with can break. Here we are in SA. Majority of the time, we've had to be able to find better ways of working, especially when ESCOM is not operational as we know it to be. We began to realize that we could not move around on the roads as we used to be able to do. So product got to be stuck on the N3. We got to be able to find the Suez Canal being blocked by just one ship that was there for a long time. And that meant that our systems needed to be revisited. Where we had been dealing with the issues of uncertainty, we began to realize how anxious the people were working with. When there is anxiety, you know for a fact that we're operating in a space of survival. And survival, it does not really provide for us creativity for the future. We deal with the now and the next day, essentially. What anxiety brings through to us is a state of fear driving what we do. It is also worth noting that where ambiguity had been the terminology that had been utilized, we realized we're operating in incomprehensible environments. Things that we thought we could understand, and we only needed to be able to clarify the different meanings turned out to be, we needed to be all the more able to comprehend. So when somebody says COVID, what does that mean? When somebody says pandemic, what does that mean? When somebody says we've been through this 100 years ago, what does that really mean? And then we came to realize that it's not just about pure complexity. It's also about the fact that we're operating in a non-linear environment. We've been believing for quite some time with Moore's law that knowledge and information doubles every 18 months. But the last 18 months have shown us something that is definitely not the same in terms of growth. Technology has taken over and has taken the lead in all things that we're needing to be able to work with. So, as CEOs, what is it that we've had to be doing? In a space of brittle settings, we have had to be able to look into how we build capacity, how we ensure that the people that we're working with are resilient. They can cope with the challenges that are there. When we are faced with anxiety, we've had to be able to come through as leaders, model empathy, model mindfulness and model self-care. Because if we don't take care of ourselves, chances are when we're engaging with people out there, we show to them that which is the wrong side of ourselves, a side that we do not wish for anybody to be able to catch us on. What we also began to appreciate in an environment where there's so much incomprehensible, our intuition had to be able to guide us. We needed to be able to make sure that the working environment is highly transparent and nobody is thinking that we are doing things in order to do them in. We needed to be able to give an impression to everybody that we work with that we are in this thing together. And finally, as you're looking into the non-linear situation of the way things were, we've had to be consistently checking what's our context. What are we dealing with? We are in lockdown level 5. What does that mean? We're in lockdown level 4, adjusted level 3, adjusted level 2. What do those really mean? And then we've had to be adaptable. We've had to be able to look into our policies and procedures differently to the way we have always been. It became very interesting for us to be able to appreciate that we're operating in an environment where previously we started 2020 thinking we only are going to be grappling with about 5 generations. But right there and then, we began to appreciate that we had a 6th generation coming through. We've come through the generation called the Builders, who were there before the Second World War, and we then had those who were there at the time of the Second World War, called Boomers. We moved on. They gave birth to Generation X, who have been around between 1965 and 1982, and people born after that were referred to as Generation Y or the Millennials. A good many of you who are on this viewing audience right now will be familiar with the fact that your parents are part of the millennial generation, or if not, you yourself are a late millennial. Then we've got the Z generation. These are people who were there right at the turn of the century, 1999, 2000, they came into this world. Then we hosted the World Cup. When we hosted the World Cup, a new generation was born, and that is referred to as the Alpha generation. Now, what is really interesting is to be able to notice what language has been instrumental in governing what's there. For us as leaders, we've had to be able to reorientate ourselves altogether from a situation where we used to be controlling to coordinating, and move from coordinating to getting into a situation where we are needing to co-create with our teams. Now, as you join an organization, as you become a part of any enterprise right now, we'll be looking for you to be a co-creator of what we have so that you have a sense of ownership of what the organization is about, what the client base is for the organization. Central to that is an appreciation that as we transitioned between 2020 and 2021, the world was one that is asking of us as leaders to create an environment of trust. Stephen R. Covey authored the book called The Eighth Habit, and in it, he talks about the importance of finding our voice and then helping others to find their voice. And his son, Stephen M.R., then takes this further and says, in order to be able to help others find their voice, as a leader, you gotta be able to inspire trust. Therefore, the first thing we needed to be able to do is to be inspirational. We needed to be tapping into people's souls and into their spirits. And as we moved with that, we began to appreciate that we will need to be caregivers, and we will need to be coaches in an environment wherein many are adjusting to new terrains altogether. That calls for co-creation, where engineering and finance were the key disciplines that were driving enterprises. we began to find that we need to be able to tap onto the health facility, health professions. We needed to be able to begin to look into what the artists can give to us. We began to find value in the work of the psychologists, psychometrists, all of those. But then more importantly, caregivers, as we realized we needed to be able to do more in that space. And finally, we began to appreciate the importance of being engaging. What does this really mean? It means we're not looking just for pure motivation of people in the workplace. It says we're seeking to be able to ensure that as we have a hybrid environment where we are on occasion meeting with our teams face to face, we also have to be in a manner in which it is possible in a virtual environment for our teams to feel they are as cared for as would be in the pre-COVID situation. So, what became most critical? Up until 2020, virtually every organization was talking about how we can be the best in the world, best in our sector, best in our industry. Jeff Henderson comes through and really presents through something that I found extremely useful in engaging with my colleagues and also engaging in the client space. And this is understanding being best for colleagues, best for others. And what does that tell us? Well, first and foremost, we need to touch base with what's our purpose? As a person, why am I here? As a person, why are you here? And then, as an organization, why do we exist? Well, of course, Simon Sinek has written extensively around this particular question, and it really flows from an understanding if you do not begin with an end in mind, you're most likely to be able to fall for anybody's ideas, as it were. So, clarity of purpose. Second, the business needs to be able to succeed and carry on beyond ourselves. So it needs to be profitable. In that profitability, we begin to be able to ask ourselves in three key areas. How are we taking care of the environment? How are we taking care of the business? How are we taking care of people? That then takes us to four key groupings we need to pay attention to. And you need to see yourself in the midst of that. First, taking care of you, taking care of myself. If I don't take care of myself and I don't lead me, chances are I will be falling for other people's ideas. Second, I get best when I'm operating within a team. And you too will find that one is too small a number to make the impact it needs. Every one of the most influential people we had in the world have operated in the team, created teams as well. But of course, all that we do is going to find expression when our customers tell us that what we are offering is of value to them. And as they come and they confess that what we are offering is of value to them, the purchases are the indicators of the relevance of our offering. And if our offering is relevant, it then means we can be well received even in society as people who are good corporate citizens. And our enterprise becomes one that we should be proud to be a part of. So then, as leaders, we began to ask, what are going to be the key skills we all need to be able to possess as we look into the job market and we look into the new people entering, and also others who are redefining where they are going to be able to work? We begin to appreciate there will be at least 8 core skills. First, it is important to be able to make sure that there is adaptability and resilience. We've spoken to the importance of resilience because of the brutal working environment we are in. Resilience in itself speaks to our ability to endure longer periods, longer challenges, as it were, but being adaptable. Second, it is important for us to be tech savvy. What do I mean by this? From about 1999, we began to have conversations around Y2K, and computers became the way in which we were interacting. We do not just get to be dependent on technology. We needing to be able to navigate technology and let it be to our benefit wherever we are. It becomes crucial for us to also ensure that we are able to amass for ourselves digital skills as well as analytics, being able to make sense of the information that is coming through to us. Back to Moore's law, information doubles every 18 months. Well, we've gone into the expounding and compound growth of everything we have, where we used to be able to talk about gigabytes, we get zerobytes and all kinds of interesting numbers. And as the data gets to be more and more, we need to be able to analyze it and make good sense of it. With that in mind, it is important to be able to be in a work environment capable of helping us to be able to solve the problems. Because any working environment that is with more problems than solutions will become irrelevant. Therefore, your skill that we're going to be able to value is your ability to help us solve problems, but also to be critical in your thinking, critical of our thinking. You get into the working environment and you are able to write and you are able to express yourself in terms of audibly. We are able to go much further. What we're beginning to appreciate in the space of communication is that we need to have upward communication, downward communication, and sideways communication. What is your ability to contribute to enabling us to communicate better when you come into our organization? That becomes extremely critical. And second to last is self-leadership. Self-leadership before team leadership, before group engagements, as it were. If I lead myself well, I'm able to help others to lead themselves too. And finally, it's critical to be able to let this terminology of emotional intelligence be closest to us. This has become all the more critical for us as CEOs, executives of organizations, because we may find that we've been checking up on people when in fact we're needing to be able to check in with them. The work environment is one that is asking for you now to be able to distinguish yourself. So how will you distinguish yourself? What skills will you be bringing to the working environment? We appreciate that not everybody is exposed to same stimuli, same facilities, as it were, but I want you to be able to contemplate, are you able to connect to cloud computing as a skill you could be able to build for yourself? There is less of mainframes, things are up in the cloud. Are you able to be able to get into opportunities that are being provided for you to get into a tech world and enable cloud computing for yourself? Second, helping people to deal with risks. What March 2020 brought through to us were so many of the things we had not planned for, we had not prevented, we had not forethought about. Risk management is going to be a key skill you need to be able to bring to the organization. Data analytics, as well as business analytics. You come into an environment and you look into what has already been gathered over the period and you see the trends. And if you can communicate something of value around the trends that are forming, we will find value in you, and therefore you could find that you're ahead of your peers. Machine learning has become one of the key skills that are needing to be able to help us to take us into the future better. And of course, artificial intelligence has long been spoken about ad infinitum. But what is going to be critical is to be able to understand how you can harness the knowledge that is being generated through the various technological means so that your contribution makes it such that we inside our organizations can feel like we've got the right person with you. A skill that is going to be extremely critical into the future is the ability to persuade people towards your point of view. And among others, is to be able to share what is the business case around what you're saying. Because if what you're sharing with me cannot demonstrate and model true value to the next person, I'm unlikely to be moved by you. So therefore, you will need to be able to make sure you are able to sell and sell effectively. And somebody will easily be able to say to me, but I'm not good in sales. And guess what? You're selling me on your inability to sell. Here is the thing we needing to be able to pay attention to. All of us are in the space of selling. And we need to be able to make sure that the sales we do produce results for us. Here's the thing. If you're thinking about what will make you to stand out in the marketplace, I had a conversation with a couple of CEOs and executives who are my peers in the industry, and they listed about 8 things that they believe you will need to be able to have in order to be ahead in the race. Think about it. If you're energetic and you are able to self-start, you will find that people will be attracted to you. General Electric used to be able to have the language of energy, energizing, executing, and with that, passion. And if you're able to get that going, you're going to be able to find yourself well received. Being innovative and creative is something that we are going to be able to looking for all the more. My peers, my colleagues are looking for that out of everybody new coming in. People who are able to demonstrate that they are self-aware get to be well received in any organization. The induction process, the onboarding process is going to be a whole lot easier. The next thing for you to be able to think about is, are you able to learn? What is your appetite for learning? Learning agility. When tools are presented through to you, are you able to connect to them just straightforward? Are you needing to be able to have someone teach you all the time? But more importantly, are you willing to unlearn what you went through in your 12 years of schooling? And if you've gotten into university, how do you make sure that that's...
Let's just take it before this. Sorry. My bad. I'm like, I can't take that out of the audio. There you go. Okay, cool. You ready? Okay, so just dial it back before. I don't know if you remember right about me. Should we 5, 4, 3, 2.
Your ability to learn is going to be extremely critical. Means through which you learn is going to be very critical so that you can actually adopt what is needed and adopt it very, very well. The key question that we're going to be able to bring through to your attention is, are you able to unlearn what was going on in the 12 years of high school, or up to high school, and your time at university? Are you able to unlearn what was there pre-COVID and learn afresh in terms of what an agile working environment is looking for? And then relearn culture-specific things, because what is going to be critical is your cultural quotient, your ability to be able to move into any environment with the greatest of ease, read the environment, and state quite categorically, this is the space I want to be in, or this is not the space I want to be in. I will be able to contribute here, I will not be able to contribute here. And then it's important to be able to consider, we achieve more with others. In the business environment, we aim for the whole being greater than the sum of the parts. Therefore, 1 + 1 should equal 3 or more. And therefore, when you are a part of a team, you are going to be seen as somebody who is a contributor that is able to use your strengths and not rely on just your strengths, but the strengths of others. And you will also find that the contribution of others addresses your shortcomings. Teams support one another. And of course, most critical above all things is being true. in structural engineering, the integrity of the building is what ensures that if and when there are storms, it is able to survive. When there are earthquakes, it's able to survive. The same applies to us. When we are integrous and we are true to ourselves, whatever the storms come, we'll be able to navigate them. Therefore, your being true to you is going to be extremely important. And finally, your communication ability. My colleagues have indicated that if they're able to find people that can help them communicate and communicate in the language that is relevant to the audience, they will pay top rents for that. Therefore, look into what are the key skills that are going to be needed to go forward. There's a beautiful statement that comes through from Michael Jordan. It says, champions don't become champions when they win an event, but in the hours, weeks, months, and years they spend preparing for it. We've just come out of the Olympics. Many have been practicing for more than 4 years in order to be able to do a 10-second sprint. That is telling us we needing to be able to pay attention to. Mahlangu has come through as a Paralympiad gold medalist, and we want to be able to pull some lessons from there and say, what is your winning aspiration? You got to be able to think about that. Second, where will you play so you can distinguish yourself? Third, how will you do that? Are you surrounding yourself with people who can assist you to get to the place you need to get to? Fourth, it's important for you to think about what are the capabilities you will need to succeed in the industry you're choosing to be a part of. And then finally, you got to be able to ask yourself, what management systems will be required to help you to get what you need to get to? Wrapping up, it's important to be able to think about how greatness can be defined. Great things come from hard work and perseverance. If you're seeking to be great, work hard, persevere, no excuses. And of course, the greatest of them all, Muhammad Ali, said, if my mind can conceive it and my heart can believe it, then I can achieve it. And I want you to be able to take that and make it part of you. Caster Semenya has said it so beautifully. When I am in that lane and I hear Caster Semenya from South Africa, I always know I'm doing it for my people. They love and support me. And I will always do them proud. I will always put them first. Without them, I'm nothing. Caster says this, and I believe it is the thing we can take for ourselves. More importantly, as you enter the job market, job is a journey of the broke. Work is what will distinguish you. Let your gift open the path for you. Aristotle said it. Excellence is a habit. You can be a part of that. And if you make excellence your habit, South Africa will be great, and so will Africa. Thank you so very much.
For more informative videos, visit www.empoweryouth.co.za.